Most people only see the parts of a subway system that passengers are meant to see. Platforms, trains, escalators. But far beneath the city are miles of maintenance tunnels, service chambers, abandoned track sections, and forgotten access corridors that most people will never enter. The workers who maintain those areas spend thousands of hours underground every year. Most shifts are uneventful, but every so often, something happens that they can't explain. Tonight, you'll hear 3 terrifying stories from subway maintenance workers who encountered something deeply unsettling while working beneath the city. I've worked in subway maintenance for over 11 years. Most people assume the dangerous part of the job is the trains. Honestly, that's usually the least concerning thing down there. The real challenge is spending entire nights underground, in places most people don't even know exist. Beneath the city are miles of tunnels that never appear on public maps. Old maintenance corridors, electrical chambers, signal rooms, abandoned track sections, entire networks hidden beneath the streets above. Most nights are routine. You inspect equipment, replace damaged parts, fill out paperwork, then go home. Nothing exciting, nothing memorable, which is exactly why this incident still bothers me years later, because it's the only thing that's ever happened underground that I genuinely cannot explain. This happened in February of 2021. I was assigned an overnight inspection inside an abandoned tunnel section beneath the east side of the city. The tunnel wasn't connected to any active train route. No passenger service, no maintenance crews. Almost nobody ever entered it anymore. In fact, most of the newer employees didn't even know it existed. My shift started at midnight. The assignment was simple: inspect several signal cabinets, take photographs, document any issues, then leave. Normally it would have taken about 2 hours. Nothing unusual. Around 2 a.m., I climbed down an access ladder and entered the tunnel. The second my boots hit the concrete floor, I noticed how incredibly quiet it was. When you're that deep underground, the city disappears. No traffic, no sirens, no wind, no people. Just endless darkness. My flashlight illuminated maybe 30 feet ahead. Everything beyond that was completely black. I walked for about 20 minutes before reaching the first junction. According to my inspection map, I needed to take the tunnel on the left. I had just started walking when my radio suddenly exploded with static. The sound echoed through the tunnel so loudly, it made me jump. Then a voice spoke. Calm, professional, clear. You missed the turn. I stopped immediately. The voice sounded exactly like dispatch. Nothing strange about it. No distortion, no static. Just a normal employee voice. I grabbed my radio. What? A few seconds passed. Then the voice replied. Take the right tunnel. I looked down at my map. The left tunnel appeared correct. Still, construction projects change routes all the time underground, so I figured dispatch probably knew something I didn't. I turned around and entered the right tunnel. Several minutes later, the radio crackled again. Keep going, then later. Second equipment room on your left. Every instruction was accurate. Every cabinet I needed to inspect was exactly where the voice said it would be. The directions were so helpful that eventually I started treating it like a normal conversation. At one point, I even laughed. I pressed the radio button and said, "Whoever this is, you're making my job easy tonight." No answer, just silence. The tunnel somehow felt even quieter after that. But every few minutes, the voice returned. Short instructions, nothing else, no small talk. No introduction, no name, just directions. And somehow, the voice always knew exactly where I was. Not approximately, not generally, exactly, even though there were no cameras in that tunnel, no other workers scheduled. No reason anyone should have been tracking my movements. Eventually, I completed the final inspection and headed back toward the access ladder. Before climbing out, I keyed the radio one last time. "Thanks for the help tonight." Several seconds passed. Then dispatch answered. "Help with what?" I laughed. "The directions." Silence. Then dispatch replied. "What directions?" I remember standing completely still. The guy helping me navigate. The dispatcher sounded genuinely confused. "There hasn't been anyone talking to you." At first I thought he was joking. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "We've been trying to reach you for almost 20 minutes. I stared at the radio. "What are you talking about?" The dispatcher repeated himself. Multiple radio checks. Multiple attempts to contact me. No response, nothing. That made absolutely no sense. I'd been talking to someone the entire time, receiving instructions, responding, having normal conversations. When I reached the surface, my supervisor was already waiting for me. Dispatch had contacted him after failing to reach me. The next morning, they reviewed the radio logs. Every transmission was there. The voice existed. Recorded. Clear. Distinct. The problem was, nobody could identify where it came from. No employee ID. No registered radio unit. No source location. Nothing. The voice simply appeared on the frequency. Then vanished. At first everyone blamed radio interference. Maybe another agency accidentally transmitting onto our channel. But that theory quickly fell apart. Because the voice knew things it shouldn't have known. At one point it warned me about standing water around a blind corner nearly 100 feet ahead. Something I hadn't reached yet. Couldn't see. Didn't know was there. Another time it directed me toward an equipment room before I even arrived at the junction leading to it. Every instruction was correct. Every time. About a week later I mentioned the incident to one of the older supervisors. A guy who'd worked for the transit authority since the late 1980s. When I described the voice, he became strangely quiet. Then he asked me one question. Did he sound calm? I said yes, very calm. The supervisor slowly nodded. Then he told me about a maintenance foreman who died underground sometime in the late 1990s. According to him, the man knew every tunnel in the entire system from memory. If a worker got lost, he'd guide them over the radio. Everyone relied on him. I asked if he thought that was the voice I'd heard. The supervisor laughed. Of course not. Then his expression changed slightly, and he asked something that still bothers me. What exactly did he call you? I opened my mouth to answer, then stopped, because suddenly I realized something strange. The voice never used my name, never introduced itself, never identified who it was, never explained why it was helping. The only thing it ever seemed concerned about was making sure I reached every destination safely. I've worked hundreds of overnight shifts since then. I've inspected tunnels much deeper and much older than that one. I've never heard the voice again. But every now and then, when I'm alone underground, and my radio suddenly crackles to life in an empty tunnel, I still stop walking, and for just a second, I find myself listening, waiting to hear if someone's about to tell me I've missed a turn. I've spent most of my career working underground, long enough that very little surprises me anymore. When you've worked subway maintenance for over a decade, you get used to strange sounds. You get used to darkness. You get used to isolation. Most people would panic if they had to spend hours walking through empty subway tunnels at 3 in the morning. For us, that's just another shift. At least that's what I believed, until the night I saw the train. This happened in late 2019. At the time, I was working as a track maintenance supervisor for one of the city's oldest subway lines. Earlier that week, a section of rail had been flagged for a possible alignment issue. Nothing serious, just something that needed to be inspected after service ended. The last passenger train cleared the area shortly after 1 a.m. Once the line officially shut down, I headed underground alone. The inspection route wasn't very long, about 1.5 miles of track. I carried a flashlight, radio, inspection tablet, and basic maintenance equipment. Nothing unusual. The tunnel itself was ancient. Parts of it dated back almost a century. The walls were stained from decades of water seepage. Old electrical conduits ran across the ceiling. Rust covered sections of the support brackets. Everything down there felt old. Not abandoned, just forgotten. The only sound came from my boots crunching against the gravel beside the rails. Every step echoed. About 40 minutes into the inspection, I reached a stretch of tunnel between 2 stations. It was one of the quietest sections on the entire line. No nearby access shafts, no maintenance rooms, no side passages, just a long straight tunnel disappearing into darkness. I was kneeling beside the track inspecting fasteners when I felt something unusual, a vibration. At first it was so faint I thought I imagined it. Then I felt it again. The gravel beneath my boots trembled slightly. Anyone who works around trains recognizes that feeling instantly. Something heavy was moving on the tracks. I stood up, confused. The line was shut down. No trains should have been operating. I grabbed my radio. Control, can you confirm all train movements have stopped? A few seconds later, dispatch replied. Affirmative, no active train movements on your section. Before I could answer, I heard it, a distant rumble. Faint, far away, but getting closer. My first thought was simple. Someone made a mistake. Maybe a maintenance train had been authorized. Maybe another crew forgot to notify me. Whatever it was, I needed to get off the tracks. I stepped onto the narrow maintenance walkway and aimed my flashlight down the tunnel. At first, nothing. Then I saw a light. Tiny, white, steady. Far in the distance, the light slowly grew larger. The rumbling became louder. Within seconds, there was no doubt. A train was approaching. I radioed control again, this time with a lot more urgency. "I have a train coming toward my position." Several seconds passed. Then dispatch replied, "No, you don't." I actually looked down at the radio in disbelief. The train was clearly there. The light was getting brighter every second. "I can literally see it." The dispatcher sounded irritated. "There are no trains operating on your line." The next few moments are difficult to explain. Because the train looked completely normal. It wasn't damaged. It wasn't covered in graffiti. It wasn't old enough to stand out. It looked exactly like every other subway train in the system, at least from the outside. Then I noticed something wrong. The windows. Every carriage was dark. Not dim, not partially lit, completely black. There were no interior lights whatsoever. The train rolled closer, 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 then passed directly in front of me. I immediately looked through the windows. Nothing, no passengers, no operator, no movement. The interiors looked empty, almost hollow, an entire train moving through the tunnel, with nobody inside. A strange feeling settled over me. Not panic, not fear, just the overwhelming certainty that I was looking at something that shouldn't exist. Carriage after carriage rolled past. Dark, silent, empty. Then the final carriage approached. And that's when I saw it. For less than a second, a figure, standing motionless near the rear window, not sitting, not moving. Standing, watching. The tunnel lights reflected off the glass just enough for me to make out the silhouette. A person, completely still, facing directly toward me. Then the carriage disappeared into darkness. The train continued down the tunnel. The rumbling slowly faded. Within moments, it was gone. I stood there staring into the darkness, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. Finally, I grabbed my radio. Control answered immediately. The first thing they asked was, "Are you okay?" I asked again if any trains had been operating. The answer hadn't changed. No trains. No maintenance vehicles. No unauthorized movements. Nothing. My inspection was immediately canceled. A supervisor met me at the nearest station and escorted me back to the surface. The following morning, I reviewed everything. Track logs, signal records, movement reports, power usage, maintenance schedules. Nothing. There wasn't a single indication that a train had entered that section of track. According to the system, it never happened. What bothered me wasn't the missing records. It wasn't even the fact that dispatch couldn't explain it. It was the figure. Because during the brief moment I saw that final carriage, I got the distinct feeling they weren't surprised to see me. Almost like they'd expected me to be standing there, waiting, watching, just like they were. A few weeks later, I mentioned the incident to one of the older maintenance managers, a guy who'd worked the system for nearly 30 years. When I finished telling the story, he stayed quiet for several seconds. Then he asked me a question. "What line was it on?" I told him. His expression changed, only slightly, but enough for me to notice. Then he said something that still sticks with me. "You're not the first person who's reported that." I laughed, assuming he was joking. He wasn't. According to him, over the years a handful of workers had reported seeing an unauthorized train on that same stretch of track. Always late at night. Always after service ended. Always completely dark inside. And every single report mentioned one thing. A person standing in the last carriage, watching. I've worked hundreds of overnight inspections since then. I've never seen that train again. And honestly, I'm perfectly okay with that. Because every now and then, when I'm standing alone in a tunnel after midnight, and I feel a vibration in the rails beneath my boots, I still find myself checking the darkness ahead, just to make sure there isn't a light slowly getting closer. I've worked subway maintenance for nearly 13 years, long enough that very little catches me off guard anymore. Most people think the dangerous part of the job is the trains. Honestly, the trains are the easy part. They're predictable. Schedules are predictable. Equipment failures are predictable. Even emergencies usually make sense once you know what happened. What always bothered me were the things that didn't make sense, and one incident in particular still sticks with me years later. It happened during the spring of 2022. At the time, my crew and I were replacing aging communication cables beneath one of the busiest subway stations in the city. Above us, thousands of people moved through the station every day. Below us was a completely different world. Most passengers have no idea how much infrastructure exists beneath a subway station. There are maintenance corridors, storage chambers, electrical rooms, ventilation shafts, service passages, entire sections that haven't been used in decades. Some of them don't even appear on modern maps anymore. That night, there were 4 of us underground. The job itself was simple. Remove damaged cable, install new cable, test the connection, go home. Nothing unusual, at least not at first. Around 1:30 in the morning, while we were pulling cable through a conduit run, I heard something strange. A phone ringing. At first it was faint, easy to mistake for machinery. But then it rang again, longer this time, loud enough that everyone stopped working. I looked up. "So you guys hear that too?" Nobody answered immediately. Then one of the guys slowly nodded. "Sounds like a phone." The sound echoed through the concrete corridor, every few seconds. Ring, ring, ring. The problem was, there shouldn't have been any working phones down there. Most of the emergency tunnel phones had been disconnected years ago. The entire communication system had been replaced. Still, the ringing continued. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my flashlight and followed the sound. The farther I walked, the older the tunnel looked. The walls were stained black from decades of moisture, dust-covered equipment that clearly hadn't been touched in years. Old warning signs hung crooked on the walls. Then, I saw it. Mounted to the concrete, bright red, covered in grime, an emergency tunnel phone. The thing looked ancient, like it belonged in a museum. And somehow, it was ringing. I stood there staring at it, trying to understand how that was even possible. Then the ringing stopped. The silence felt heavier somehow. A few seconds later, the phone rang again. Louder, more aggressive, almost demanding to be answered. Against my better judgment, I picked up the receiver. At first there was only static, a low crackling hiss. I waited. Several seconds passed. Then a man spoke, calmly. "You're not supposed to be down here today." I froze. The voice sounded normal, not distorted, not robotic, not crackly, just a person. I immediately replied, "Who is this?" Silence. Then the line went dead. No click, no goodbye. Nothing. Just silence. I stood there for several seconds, before slowly hanging up the receiver. When I returned to the crew, everyone immediately started asking questions. Who called? What did they want? Was someone messing with us? I told them exactly what happened. Nobody laughed, nobody made jokes. The entire thing felt wrong. One of the guys walked back with me to inspect the phone. What we found made even less sense. According to station records, that emergency line had been disconnected years earlier. Not disabled, disconnected. The wiring had supposedly been removed, yet somehow it had just rung repeatedly. And someone had answered from the other end. We finished the job, reported everything, then went home. The next day, management sent a supervisor and 2 technicians to investigate. That's when things got strange, really strange. While tracing old wiring routes, they discovered a hidden maintenance chamber behind a sealed utility passage. Most employees had no idea the room even existed. The entrance had been concealed behind decades of storage equipment and abandoned electrical panels. Inside, someone had been living there. Recently, there were blankets, food wrappers, bottled water, flashlights, portable batteries, a camping stove. Whoever had occupied the room wasn't just hiding. They were comfortable. The chamber connected to several forgotten service tunnels that no longer appeared on modern blueprints. Someone familiar with the old system could move through sections of the station without ever being seen. Police searched the area. Nobody was there. No identification. No fingerprints. No useful evidence. Just signs that someone had been living beneath one of the busiest stations in the city for a very long time. But the detail that bothered me most came later. According to investigators, an old maintenance access point connected the hidden chamber to the corridor where we'd been working. Whoever lived there would have had a direct view of us. They could see us, hear us, watch us, the entire night, and we would have never known. I've thought about that phone call countless times since then. The man never asked who I was, never asked why we were there. never sounded confused. He already knew. The only thing he said was, "You're not supposed to be down here today. Not who are you? Not what are you doing?" Just that. Almost like we'd interrupted something, or stumbled into a place where he thought nobody would ever find him. I've never worked that section of tunnel again. And honestly, I don't want to. Because every time I think about that phone ringing, I remember one detail from the police report. Investigators estimated whoever had been living down there left less than an hour before they arrived. Meaning while we were replacing cables, while I was answering that phone, while all four of us were standing in that corridor, the person on the other end may have been only a few feet away, watching us from the darkness, and waiting for us to leave. Those were 3 terrifying horror stories from underground subway maintenance workers. Most people only ever see the public side of a subway system. The stations, the platforms, the trains. What they don't see are the miles of tunnels, service corridors, abandoned chambers, and forgotten sections hidden beneath the city. Places where workers often spend entire nights completely alone. And while most shifts pass without incident, sometimes they encounter things they can't explain. A voice that knows exactly where they are, a train that shouldn't exist, a phone call from a line that was disconnected years ago. Whether there's a logical explanation behind these stories or not, one thing is certain. Working underground can be a lot more unsettling than most people realize. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, let me know in the comments which one disturbed you the most. And if you work a night shift or have your own unexplained experience, I'd love to hear about it. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more true horror stories, and as always, thanks for listening. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.